Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day. Got a couple of things to share with you before we get to our guest today. One is from the writer T.S. Eliot. And sometimes when I see someone quote someone, that's like if it's in my history book, I just assume that it's a good quote. But sometimes when someone quotes someone, I'll take that quote and just go look. I'm curious, is that really the quote? Because, in the day of misinformation and people just putting words in others' mouths, you never know. But T.S. Eliot said this along the way. And as a former publisher and as someone who's on this show, I would think that this is probably pretty true. And this is what it says. Most of the trouble in the world is caused by people wanting to be important. Most of the trouble in the world is caused by people wanting to be important. So anyway, I took that quote and I went and did a little research about it. Here's what I found. It's actually not directly word of mouth. But in a 1949 work called The Cocktail Party, Eliot actually wrote this: half of the harm that is done in the world is due to people who want to feel important. And, as a former publisher, I can tell you, I've met a bunch of people who want to be important. And usually I'm working through some issues that were caused by them. And you can say it was trouble. Yeah, probably was some trouble. And the real quote saying there was some harm done. Yeah, I've faced those folks. We can talk with my guest about that here in just a second. Hey, the other thing that I came across on my electronic history book that I get every morning was a quote from Pat Tillman. You may remember Pat Tillman played NFL football. After the September the 11th event, he decided that he was going to join the military. He does that. He leaves the NFL. He does that, and then he's ultimately killed in a really tough situation in Afghanistan. And of course, movies have been written about it. If you don't know about Pat Tillman, you should go look him up. He's someone that we should always honor. He really put his life where his mouth was and his desire to make a difference. But he said this along the way. He said, somewhere inside, we hear a voice. It leads us in the direction of the person we wish to become. But it is up to us whether or not to follow. Let me say it again. Somewhere inside, we hear a voice. It leads us in the direction of the person we want to become. But it is up to us whether or not to follow. And boy, one thing for sure, Pat Tillman heard that voice and he followed. And, people like him are an inspiration to me. People like him are one of the reasons I do this show, because it makes me want to draw out of my guests the essence of who they are. And, the person that they are and the person they want to become, we can learn from those experiences. So God bless Pat Tillman and the sacrifice he made for our country. Okay, now let's shift gears. I enjoy catching up with my friend Hunter Dawkins, who is the owner and publisher of the Gazebo Gazette here in coastal Mississippi. He's also a SuperTalk opinion contributor and someone I just enjoy catching up with from time to time. Hunter, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well, Ricky. Thank you very much. And I definitely agree with you on some of the details about Pat. Pat was a good man and definitely should be honored.
Yeah. What do you think about that first quote? Let me read to you the way he actually wrote about it in the Cocktail Party in 1949. Half of the harm that is done in the world is due to people who want to feel important. You might come across a few people like that along the way, don't you?
Yeah, that's, of course, Ricky, as you know, the media, everybody, especially nowadays across the board, not only people, but, organizations or companies that they want to put themselves out there, whether it be through social media, through regular media, broadcast, things as such. And I've dealt with a few people, of course, and, I know a lot of people would tell you, well, Hunter's trying to jump on that train too. I mean, and it's kind of given. I have to watch myself, trying to do my job a little better each time, and being able to really calculate the ability for this to be helpful for the community in what I do. So.
Yeah, I know it's important, and that's what happens is, like me on the show, for a matter of fact, that You had the opportunity to cover so many stories, to be involved in so many events that are important to the community, talk to people who are working in the trenches to make a difference. And you come across things from time to time that really catch you, and you want to figure out, you only have limited amount of time in the day. I mean, one thing about a small newspaper publisher, especially these days, there are only a few hours in the day. You don't have a lot of extra time to do other stuff because you're spread super thin. But you do come across things that capture you, and you want to figure out how you can make a difference. And it might be in something you write, it might be a story, it might be an opinion column that you write. It may be a cause that you just sort of connect to and stay focused on over a period of time. But you had that opportunity.
It might just be showing up to something, showing up to an event, just being there and being present is a lot of quality towards certain details, and a lot of people appreciate you just being there half the time.
I know they do, man. But there could be a lot of drawing on you. I mean, look, I'll get these requests. I get requests that people, make a speech here, be involved in the fundraiser there, and all these different requests. Lots of requests. And what I sometimes I say yes. I wish I could say yes more than I say yes. But truth is, I'm actually doing this show during retirement, and as a volunteer in the community, when I was a publisher and I was a volunteer, man, I said yes to everybody, and I did just about everything. And I won a presidential volunteerism award. I mean, I've done it. I've spent thousands of hours in the community. And it's even today when I get these requests, it's hard for me to say no, to be honest with you. And what I tell them is, I might not be able to come to your event, but come on my show and let's talk about your event. I'll find a way through my show, through the time that I've committed already on my show, to bring a lot of attention,
I'm sure Ms. Ann appreciates that too.
she does. She really does. I have to tell you a real quick story. I was involved in an issue on SuperTalk Outdoors. It was very time consuming. A lot of sources coming in from all over the place, and just a time-consuming deal. And so it was a weekend. Actually, it was a Sunday morning. It was before church, and I got a phone call. Now, when I get a phone call, I'll usually walk out on the deck and pace while I'm on the phone, try to get some steps in. It's just kind of a habit that I've got. And but I try to get 10,000 steps a day minimum. That's my goal. So when I'm on the phone, I'll go walk. I want to get those steps in. But when I got off the phone, she says, because Ann calls me Bubba. She said, Bubba, it's starting to look a lot like your CEO again. Like I said, well, it's episodic. It's an important issue that I need to be involved in, and I'm kind of leading the way on that particular story, and I'm going to stay focused on it. But the good news is there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not going to get sucked into a vortex, and no, this is not the way it's going to be. But she was quick to point out to me that it was looking pretty consuming there for a while. And I don't blame her. Because I retired for a reason. And my intention is, in doing this show, is not get sucked back into a full-time vortex. That's not what I'm hoping to do. But it's hard for someone like me to not be engaged, to be honest with you. We were talking about your dad being a urology doctor. I mean, he's the same way. He wants to be engaged. And you're the same way. You're going to be engaged. It's just part of who we are.
Well, just like him, the lack of people that consistently are with the organization, or for instance, for me, a newspaper, it's the lack of people with the assistants. There's people all the time that are asking me to do things here or there, but they have to be knowledgeable about my time and how much I can devote to that particular issue. So.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, you can't solve all the world's problems, but there is a way for you, through what you do in your day-to-day world, to make an impact. And maybe something that you do, lights a match and gets things moving, in a positive direction.
My favorite response, Ricky, to individuals are, I always have 14 Pulitzer Prize stories on the waiting. So,
I'm sure you do. That is for sure. So, Hunter, it's been busy. How are things going at the Gazebo Gazette these days?
it's definitely starting to pick up because as I mentioned to you earlier about having the budget season, this is really the steps to where they're starting to talk about the budget upcoming, and there's obviously concerns with that every year, and that's with not only the West Harrison County community, that's with the county itself.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. When we come back, we'll start kind of working our way through a laundry list of news items and enjoy catching up with my friend Hunter Dawkins. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have my friend Hunter Dawkins, who's the president and owner of the Gazebo Gazette. He's also a contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News. Hey, when we went to break, we're talking about the budget season. You know, you got budget talks that are happening inside Pastor Shan, Long Beach, Gulfport, Harrison County, as you pointed out. How do you keep up with all that? Because there's so much news that swirls around each of those discussions.
Well, one of the things that things that I had mentioned to you previously, and you and I discussed, and you gave me a pretty good tidbit on this, is to develop relationships with people, and developing a relationship with certain, CFOs or people that handle the finances, not only in the county, but is involved in the cities too as well. That really helps you, being able to tell the story and be able to talk about, instead of just punching out numbers into a story, being able to talk about specific issues with each story. And because, there's a lot of instances where people and citizens are concerned. They're concerned with how come we are getting all this money, we're having to pay these taxes, what are we seeing as a result? And a lot of people don't realize how much money it costs to provide public safety, law enforcement, fire departments. I mean, you saw yesterday on Highway 49 that huge fire that took hours. I mean, that costs money for not only Harrison County Fire Rescue, from Pasco Shan and Long Beach and all the rest of these groups that go out to assist them. That costs money to provide resources for that. And I think people underestimate the value of that. Also with harbors and things like that, harbors go through different processes. Like the last few years we've had, about close to the last 5 years, we've had some significant storms that have caused, obviously, Long Beach a huge harbor damage after Hurricane Zeta. Pasco Shan took some pretty big hits from Zeta and Hurricane Ida. And those are just little details that add up. And people, they don't exactly understand all that. And they think that what they're seeing and hearing in Facebook Live is, when they Facebook Live these meetings, that there are certain things that they're looking for, but that's not the big picture. And you develop those relationships with the financial people with the cities because they know how to accumulate that to you.
Hey, I love, mentioning the damage to Pasco Shan Harbor during Hurricane Zeta, and the way that Rimmer Covington and that group kind of came together to create the charter docks there as wonderful vision. I've done a bunch of shows about it on my outdoor show, but it's special what they've done there and how it connects to the restaurant and how people go down there and just enjoy, checking out what the charter boat captains catch on that day. That's some cool stories, but you're right. There's no doubt there are lots of pressures on the budgets. How do you assess the sort of financial health of coastal Mississippi and what you have to see grace over?
Well, and of course, because I want to put more influence into things that are going to benefit, not only myself but potential advertisers, potential things that people want to be invested in the community. For instance, you mentioned Rimmer Covington, who's a good Rimmer Covington Jr. is a good friend of mine. He and I went to high school together. And Commissioner Ronnie Daniels, who are both kind of leading the charge on the Shaggies rebuilding over that portion and adding on to that past harbor. their good friends and, their potential clients and all that. And they have a good story to be able to tell, where people would be interested in, what's going on down there, along with the Pasquarshane Harbor. Even though we just had a recent switch down in Pasquarshane, a recent switch of the harbor master, that's obviously something for news cycle because Russell's a good man, but he applied for the job over in Gulfport, got accepted over there in that position. So we're looking for somebody new, and that's just something to try to keep in the mix with what's going on in the community.
Yeah, so you you mentioned Commissioner Ronnie Daniels. Specifically, Ronnie in his full-time role is a charter boat captain, and
That's right.
I love having him on my show, both this show and Super Talk Outdoors. I love the collaboration between him and Remember Covington Jr., as you pointed out, and what they were able to come up with, this leap of faith they took. And it's special because there are very few places like this where you can, like, the whole family can come, and let's say the dad and some of the kids want to go fishing, but the mother and the rest don't want to. They can come down there and drop them off, and they can go downtown and enjoy the shops and whatever. It's just
Absolutely.
a cool thing. It's why it's been awarded one of the most unique like it in America. I mean, it's just, why wouldn't you fall in love with that and what they've done there? They took a lemon that was delivered by Hurricane Zeta and created this really cool thing that is this collaboration between the private sector and the city and the harbor that created a destination place to go. I love those stories.
Well, and they working with Bacchus on the beach and other areas right up there close to Davis and downtown Pasquarshane, where the Hancock Bank is, and where you have Asian Paradise, Parker's Jewelry, and all those other stores inside of Sazerac Square, where it's providing a lot more to the community, and people are enjoying that opportunity. Coming back to Pasquarshane, which there's been, couples and groups and families that haven't been back to Pasquarshane really since the storm. And I think the city's doing a good job at least promoting that. And I know Long Beach is working on that too as well. And Gulfport, I mean, Jesus, they're building, that new bridge from Jones Park all the way to the aquarium. It looks fantastic. And I'm still wondering how they were able to do that with, what they had. But they, of course, then they're putting into Fishbone Alley and other places like that, really helping the community down there build itself up.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Hey, Hunter, so this has been a really active legislative session. You and I are pre-recording this show, so it's going to play in the next couple of days. So a lot can change as it relates to specifics about the legislative session before this show airs. But specifically, though, as far as the Gazebo Gazette, where do you get your news from about what's happening at the Mississippi legislature?
Well, I've got, as I told you earlier about relationships, I've built some really quality relationships. Plus, of my time a long time ago when I was a younger man, and yourself was a younger man too as well, with a little bit more of a full head of hair, Ricky. But that being said, when when I was working in the legislature back in right after the storm in 2005 and 2006 with the Attorney General's office, that really helped me build some relationships with people that have lasted for years, and something that I've really developed with. But not only that, I've developed relationships with a lot of the reporters up there in the Capitol Press. Bobby Harrison, Jeff Pender, that used to work with you in the Sun Herald. Emily Waxter Pettis is one of my favorite people. And that's, she and I discuss quite a number of things because I am an AP member also too, Ricky. And so that way there's a lot of connection, at least that they, if I need something, they kind of help me steer that right way.
Yeah, that's true. So some of the Mississippi Today's work can make it into your newspaper from time to time?
Nah, I'm not that chagrin. It's I do my own investigation work. I mean, granted, I use a lot of the sources from Mississippi Today and referencing certain details about it, but they're looking for the big picture story versus me. I'm looking for the local community story.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, listen, I've had the opportunity to have a wide range of state officials, Michael Watson and others, Chad White, Jeremy England, and I in just the past week had a long conversation about this, and so many others. We've kind of cut and diced the legislative session from a bunch of different angles. But this session has been you. Go ahead.
Michael's a good friend of mine. I've gotten to know him.
Yeah.
Really, he came on right as I was leaving working in the state legislature, and he worked with my mother for a pretty lengthy time in the state legislature. So.
Yeah, Michael Watson is from the coast, statewide official. I really enjoy catching up with him. We've become pretty good friends through this show, and he's extraordinarily responsive, as you know. So if you need something, he'll get back to you pretty quickly. But this is kind of a legislative session like none other, because you've got a new Speaker of the House in Jason White, and of course Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann comes back again, and you've got the dynamics that they say we're going to focus on a bunch of big issues simultaneously. And it's all coming down to the wire. And when we come back on the other side, we'll talk about what some of those big issues are and get your thoughts about it. We'll see you after this with more from my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. When we went to break, we were talking about we've got a new speaker in Jason White, Delbert Hosemann. Man, listen, Delbert Hosemann. I'm going to tell you, he's read every bill. He is involved in every bill. He's a former tax attorney, really good lawyer. And he may frustrate people because he's involved in all the details, but at the same time, he's a leader who understands all the details. And it's hard to pull any wool over his face. At the same time, people, they're all going to have their views about how different people manage things. Jason White is already proven to be a guy that's going to multitask, and where there might be sort of a lull in the action when the legislative session first get into session. That wasn't the case this year. He expected immediately for his chairman to get busy, and they went off tackling some really big issues. Lots of discussions around education. I think education may end up being something that goes into a special session. We'll get what Hunter thinks about this in a minute. Medicaid expansion, and a conversation that Hunter and I have said many times is one we need to have in this state. We're saying no to $1 billion a year, and we have for many years. Is the time for that to end? And then, the PERS system, the state employees retirement system, and how they were going to tackle that. I don't know that they've ever tackled this many big issues simultaneously, but there's been a lot to focus on this year, hasn't there, Hunter?
Yeah, Ricky, and I think I'm a little bit confused every now and then. Of course, I agree with you 100% about Delbert Hosemann. The lieutenant governor is great, at least as far as going through each bill. But the confusing part for me is how big he is on public education and PERS, and yet his Medicaid position is really taking away, not exactly what the state of Mississippi really needs, like you had mentioned about losing the billions of dollars from what we could use to be able to put in what the House version came through for. And I don't really acknowledge that, understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I don't either. I mean, Delbert Hosemann told me at the beginning of the session that we may be able to actually get something done this year. I think the way he said it, the stars are aligning. Well, listen, after so many years, 7 years, however long it was, of making Medicaid expansion out to be the boogeyman, you may not be able to turn the corner all in 1 year, but the reason you do this is to help hospitals. 51% of Mississippi is in rural areas. Hospitals in rural areas are either closed or in financial straits. And certainly one of the things they're not able to provide is the kind of, care across the board that these communities need. It's a major problem in this state. And we can look to communities that have done Medicaid expansion. Look, when we want to do roads or we need tens of billions of dollars after a hurricane, or you name the issue. The reality is that when we need the federal government, we're just ready to take the money from them. Okay. Right. But for some reason, when it comes to, health care and, medical care, we don't want to take the money. And Mississippi is a poor state. And listen, I'm conservative, but I can't imagine if we were doing an economic development project that's going to bring $1 billion a year to us, we'd call a special session. But we've just been working so hard, at least some have, to make Medicaid expansion a boogeyman when it could be transformative for our hospitals. So important. And it's a matter of life and death, the way I look at it. The Senate's got this sort of light approach they want to take. Of course, the House is saying we need to get to a level of reimbursement that's 90% or greater. And I mean, their arguments, I understand their arguments. Now, can they get together and come up with a resolution? That remains to be seen.
Well, and of course, the governor's power on certain issues, and as I've mentioned to you before earlier in the show, at least or off the air, was the governor, had his first veto yesterday of the election commissioners being nonpartisan, and of course, that's only one step. I mean, if this Medicaid issue becomes this bill becomes actually an on his desk, he is obviously vowed to not sign anything that makes it, but is that ability to override. Of course, some people would say he's a lame duck right now, but at the same level, Governor Reeves has a lot of power in the state on what his influence is. And so,
well, it's going to, of course, he's made his position on Medicaid expansion very clear, but so it's not only can you get it, this is the most important point you're making. Not only can you get it through the legislature, but can you get enough votes that makes it so they could overcome a veto if that were the case. And so it's a tough road. But listen, most people who are close to this, the more they see the numbers and understand the numbers, it's hard to turn your head away from that kind of money coming into Mississippi, where 51% of its residents are in rural areas, and knowing the trouble that our hospital system's having. I don't know how any leader can be against that. I just don't get it.
And almost 30% of your state is under federal poverty level too, as well, Ricky. So that's got to be tested, and finding out what's going to be able to help resolve healthcare issues in their state.
Yeah, it's a really big one. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. What do you think? You think education they'll kick the ball down a few weeks from now and do a special session around that?
I don't know if that's a big enough issue right now. Or I know that the Speaker White has said that he is not going to fund MAEP at the current format, which is kind of interesting because it has been a law since 2007. But of course, the legislature hasn't ever funded, that in its entirety, except for twice, both election years. But that being said, I really think that they're going to be their focus more right now, if you're talking about a bigger issue, would be more on Medicaid than it would be on education, because that's an issue that education, I think that they feel like they can kick down the road, versus Medicaid, which is going to be a hot button issue regardless of when they sine die or not.
Yeah, my sense is they'll probably sine die, for people who don't know the phrase. That's when they will end the legislative session. It's supposed to go for this may be playing on Monday, so through the end of the week at least. I think they'll get out a little early if they decide they're going to handle some of what they need to do in a special session. It's interesting. You get 3 weeks out from the end of the session, and you think there is no way that they're going to cover the issues they got to get covered, and get the conference committee reports back and get the voting done that they've got to get done. They got a lot to do, a lot of bridge building in a very short period of time.
And you have to remember, Ricky, that The governor is the one that has to call the special session.
Right.
And if he doesn't really see anything that's going to interest him, at least from the reason why to, bill the taxpayers more money, then, or from what his statement would be, then there's no reason to meet again. So.
I think they could find a pretty compelling case around the education breakdown for sure.
Of course, but with Governor Reeves, would he feel the same way?
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, that's a good point. So there's only one person in this state who can call a special session, and it is Governor Reeves. And he may, as far as funding is concerned, he may find precedents and other ways to accomplish the funding they need to get done and say, listen, the way we pay for education in this state, there's a big disagreement about that. What the Senate wants to do is go do a deep analysis of it to try to determine what is the best approach. And of course, what the House has already determined through their Inspire approach is just gut the current approach and do it a completely different way. And they're just having disagreements about that. It will be interesting to see. At the end of the day, people can watch this and get frustrated by the process, but that's the democratic process. That's the way it works. You create, often there's vast chasms of differences, and that's why you have all these representatives there, and you have these debates, and you do these conference committees where Senate representatives and House representatives come together. They take the two plans, they try to meld them into one plan, and it's messy. People say if you like sausage, watch it be made. Don't watch it get made. Same thing goes true for laws. It can be cumbersome and frustrating and messy, but it's slow for a purpose. It's slow so that bad things can't happen. That's what they're hoping will happen. Hey, listen, when we come back on the other side, we're going to shift gears actually and talk about the Pelicans and the Saints. I mean, Saints, we got so much going on there. So we'll continue the conversation when we get back with Hunter Dawkins. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have Hunter Dawkins with us today, who is the owner and publisher at the Gazebo Gazette here in coastal Mississippi. And we were going to mention something about the NFL draft and Pelicans, but we're not going to do it because we're pre-recording the show, and some of the that will actually have played out. So we don't want to bust through that. But we did have another really interesting open item that he and I have talked about many times, and that is that how the ambulance service contracting is actually playing out now that Hancock County has made its choice. So, Hunter, why don't you give us a quick review on where all that landed now?
Well, I'm not exactly speaking 100% for the Hancock County Board of Supervisors, but they have agreed to start negotiation, just like Harrison County did with EMS, with Acadian Ambulance Services, and they are in the process of doing negotiation with.
So it's not a done deal yet, but
it's not official. But just like Harrison County, they're going through the contract. Harrison County signed the contract this last month, and so they're moving forward with that. And that, of course, gives all the three coast counties and the state of Louisiana pretty much who's behind Acadian Ambulance Services. And they've got a good business plan, and I'm very good friends with their government employees, government relations director Benny French. He and I have known each other for a long time, and we've been discussing what's going to happen.
Yeah. So I remember when I think I mentioned this to you before, when I was publisher of the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com, John Rester, actually from here in coastal Mississippi, that was involved with Mobile Medic, served on the board of Acadian. I don't know if he still does or not. I'll have to reach out to John and get the latest from him. But he and the owner of Acadian came to visit with me. We had lunch together, and I was inspired by what they had created. As a former paramedic, I had worked for Mobile Medic at one point. I remember well when John purchased the company, then ultimately sold the company, and then worked for the company that bought Mobile Medic for a number of years on a national basis. So he was really an ambulance expert, literally. And but anyway, so now in coastal Mississippi, that makes everybody's got Acadian, everybody except Gulfport and Biloxi, correct?
Right. That's 100% correct, Ricky.
And who's the company for Gulfport and Biloxi?
Pafford EMS for Gulfport and Biloxi.
And where are they from?
They are stationed, their main headquarters, I believe, is out of Brandon or somewhere in the Jackson metro area. I'm not 100% about that, but I think that's where their station is at.
So are you hearing rumblings about how coordination is going to be more challenging, or what are you hearing?
Well, like I said, with my relationship with Benny, it's more or less of, from their point of view, it's great because they already have facilities in Jackson County. They've got a close facility in Slidell, and they're already working to do development with the hospitals, especially Memorial Hospital, the county hospital. I'm not so sure about Oxnard up in Orange Grove, but I'm sure they're certainly on the ballpoint of figures with that, and including Merritt Hospital in Biloxi. But they have already got, obviously, a Singing River in Ocean Springs, and that whole Jackson County facility too. So
it'd be interesting. This has really not been much on my radar screen. Yeah, I know that you and I have just chatted about it before, and as a former paramedic, I have a sense of what coordination might look like, backing each other up, and that kind of stuff. We've talked about that before on the show, but I'll have to dive in a little bit deeper to try to understand. Is it good to have two ambulance services in coastal Mississippi, or is it challenging? I don't know the answer to the question.
I'm not sure about that either, Ricky, because from being working through the Gulf Coast for most of your life, at least, that AMR has been there for many number of years, and the demise of the AMR to what it is now, it's just astonishing of what's gone through. But of course, the cities of Gulfport and Biloxi were, they had the option to go with the county both times. And they have chosen otherwise directions. Biloxi was a little earlier than I think that most of the intendants of being able to do that, but they got a good deal apparently. I'm not exactly sure. I can't tell you 100% of what that deal was, but they got a good deal from Pafford, and they feel like they're going to trust them instead of the other three coastal counties and cities.
Yeah. Well, I'll dive into it. Sometimes diversity of service is good. A little competition never hurts anybody. It's good. It can be good for the community, but I want to understand more about it. That's for sure. Hey, listen, you wrote a column recently about mental health, something you and I've chatted about many times on this show. I wish that we could focus more on mental health just in general, and maybe on a future show. I'll invite you and Paige Roberts from the Jackson County Chamber and a couple of others, and we'll have a deeper conversation about why we need to focus more on mental health for a number of different reasons. So thanks for your column, and thanks for keeping me focused on it.
And especially among the state legislative level, it's got to take a bigger statewide perspective.
I agree completely, man. No doubt about that. Well, listen, Hunter, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend.
Take care of yourself.
This has been Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. Listen, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.